Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. On this episode, we are back down at Mueller Sports Medicine, this time talking to Richard Avis, who is their Director of Marketing and Product Development, also a former athletic trainer, someone that I've gotten to know pretty well over the last couple of years and always enjoy having conversations. I affectionately refer to him as the AT mad scientist, as he's always scheming and coming up with ideas, looking at the most recent literature, and just figuring out what they can do to make better products, help athletic trainers. We get into all of that. We really dive into tapes and the different kinds out there and all the different properties of it, things that you might even not even realize that you actually utilize and think about that's important, but they've found to actually be really important to what you're trying to get done and accomplish with the different uses of tapes. So with that, enjoy this episode.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are down at Mueller Sports Medicine in Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin, sitting with Richard Avis, which I'm not entirely sure what your title is because you do a little bit of everything, so we'll let you dive into that a little bit more. But we're going to talk tapes and everything they have to offer and the amount of effort and input and engagement that has gone into it. I know I've seen many a survey come through my email and happily fill them out to provide feedback. But first, wanted to get your background is extensive, from being an athletic trainer to everything else you've done. So please fill in what you'd like to.
Thank you. My title is Marketing Product Manager. And I am an athletic trainer by trade, although I was out of the trade for many years. I went through the program at Western Michigan University. I won't provide a date. It's further back than I like to think about. But my history, I did right out of school. I was fortunate to land a job with a professional sports team, and did work in the trenches for a couple of years. And opportunity knocked in the form of going to the sporting goods side of the industry. Company called Umbro, big soccer company worldwide, came to me and offered me a position in research and development and product management there. So it was too good to turn down. I was at Umbro for 3 years, and Adidas came knocking, and that was a fantastic opportunity. We actually moved to Germany. I worked at the world headquarters, was responsible for all of their soccer equipment globally, including the '94 official World Cup soccer ball that we developed, which was state-of-the-art at the time. At Audi a few years, and then Nike came and presented me with an opportunity that was also too good to turn down. So right after the World Cup in 1994, left Audi to begin at Nike, and was 14 years in advanced R&D and product management at Nike. So I've been on the other side of the fence for many years. I consulted. I had my own shop for a couple of years, which was not particularly enjoyable because I'm a product dog. I need to have my hands, I need to have grease under my fingernails. And when you're a consultant, especially self-employed, you have to spend as much time shaking the bushes for clients than actually doing work, and so that didn't sit so well with me. One day, out of the blue, really, Brett Mueller gives me a call. And literally the first time I ever chatted with Brett, we talked for about 45 minutes. And just hit it off. We were simpatico right from the get-go.
Okay.
And that set things in motion. And next thing you know, here we are in Prairie du Sac at Mueller. And I've been here about 3.5 years now.
Okay.
It's absolutely fantastic. I can't say how much I enjoy being back inside of the athletic training community. It's so much more rewarding than I would have guessed that it could be. The background that I have, my formal training, has proven to be invaluable as far as having perspectives about developing product. Actually, everywhere I've been, even when I was working in the sporting goods side of the business, one of the things that really, I think, differentiated me in the industry was the fact that my background as an athletic trainer allowed me insights to talk directly with athletes about their needs and extrapolate things from conversations that perhaps someone without the formal training might miss. So
Right.
That's the difference between developing good product and great product, is oftentimes being able to just pursue lines of questioning and asking the right questions. So here at Mueller, it's been fantastic. Again, I can exercise my background. I'm speaking to, communicating with the orthopedic community throughout the week, and we're engaged. Engaged is a big word here. It's part of our mantra. I think the investment that Mueller has made in its staff in the last few years, we've really ramped up the marketing side of the business here, and we can get after things now at a level that previously was not possible. One of the great things is tape. Obviously, when you're talking athletic trainers, probably for most people, the first thing that might come to mind is tape.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, tape is a big part of our lives.
The tried and true.
Yes, exactly.
Classic.
As amazing as the trade has become from a technology and the quality of education perspective, the simplicity, the elegance, the simple complexity of a product like tape is really intriguing. Because
the creativity. And
well, it seems like such a simple product, right?
The mad scientist.
It's cloth and some goo. You put them together, and you're ready to go. That's not the case.
I was gonna say, I have a feeling it's not that simple.
No, it's not. And again, the difference between being a tape company and the tape company is mining the depths,
right,
and pursuing the correct lines of questioning. Regarding athletic training as a career field, I was actually in Los Angeles last year with a regional sales rep out there who is an athletic trainer. And we were at this massive symposium at the Staples Center, actually. Every year they have an annual event where they bring in high school student trainers from formalized high school sports medicine programs. They come in from 4 or 5 states. And Brucey looked at me, and we kind of chuckled because he and I are from the same era. And he mentioned the quality and the level of training that these kids are getting now. And he was half joking but half serious when he said that he thought that it was very well possible that these high schoolers were getting as good a training into the trade as we might have been getting at the university level
Right.
back in the 80s.
Right.
Okay. And so obviously when you do get to the university level now, I'm just astounded actually at how the trade has evolved and the quality of people that are coming into it. And Mueller, we want to do everything in our power to promote athletic training as a career. It's a business, but athletic training is a big part of our DNA.
Right.
It's a passion here. It's something that we take personally. So getting back to tape, speaking about how outwardly most people would think it's a very simple type of product. Some things to consider. The first thing I would say is in regards to how tape has evolved in even only the last 5 years. 5 years ago, for example, the number of choices that an athletic trainer would have had as far as options for a white strapping tape, for example, there were about 25 on the market.
Okay.
Now there are upwards of 43
Okay. Wow.
variations on theme that are out there. We're seeing competitors selling direct off of the internet, and the level of competition has become incredibly fierce. It's hard to differentiate. Actually, believe it or not, there are a fair number of ATs out there that are confused about product.
I can believe that.
And every once in a while, we'll run into an AT who thinks he's using one type or brand of tape, and it's not. So it's just there's a lot of white noise.
Right.
And for us here, with our resources and our capacity to innovate, it's all about opportunity, really. And by engaging athletic trainers, again, getting out into the trenches, we do a lot of surveying, for example.
Yep.
Last year, we sent out a tape survey looking to dig into the details about how ATs think when it comes to how they evaluate and choose a tape. The survey was incredible, and I should mention that regarding the trade again, typically when we send out a survey, the response that we get, it's not unusual for us literally within 24 hours to have multiple hundreds of responses coming in. And for this tape survey, within 2 or 3 days, we had over 700 responses to this survey. So I think that qualifies as an acceptable sampling.
Well, I think that speaks to people feel heard, because
Right.
how many surveys do you get, and you just not going to do that one just because
Right. Well,
you don't want to do it. So that
I think part of it also is that as ATs, you are so consumed with the task at hand that honestly, I think very few ATs spend too much time thinking about the details of tape, right?
Right.
You're at a show or a sales guy comes in and you pick up a roll of tape and it's like, yeah, okay, I'll
Great.
give it a
Yeah.
whirl.
Is it going to stick? Yeah. What's it cost?
But when we went out and we actually started digging into what it is in the brain that registers with ATs when they're evaluating a specific type of tape or a brand of tape, I think they really got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know that we turned anybody into real geeks, and there are some tape geeks out there.
There are definitely. I know a
Make no
couple
mistakes.
of them.
I mean, you'll have guys pick a, they'll sniff a roll of tape, and that can be funny. But through the engagement that we've had with the AT community over the course of the last couple of years, we've identified actually multiple properties that ATs consider when they're evaluating a type of tape. And the interesting thing is that there are actually 9 properties that ATs, if only subconsciously, account for when they're evaluating a roll of tape. And the interesting thing is that obviously from one AT to the next, they're going to, each of those values will have different, there will be different weighted values assigned by every AT depending on what's important to them, right? So it wouldn't be the least bit unusual. You could put a dozen trainers in a room with the same type of tape and get 8 different opinions about that same tape. What works great for one trainer, another one might say, I wouldn't be caught dead using that product. So it's really fascinating to track on that, and we're continuing to pursue it. So things like tensioning. Obviously, tensioning, the amount of resistance that is provided as tape is taken off the roll. For example, something as simple as this. When we go in, every once in a while, I'll have a chance to sit down with some ATs and basically do what I just did with 7 or 8 different types of this type of tape. And they're amazed at when they go from one right to the next, the differences in feel just by the tensioning, okay? And that's just the physical element, right? And this all has to do with getting into the details again. The materials that go into the tape, the chemistries, how the tape is actually manufactured. There are a lot of variables that come into play as far as the actual tensioning, which can be measured here in our lab. This is one of the standardized tests that we conduct. But when you add more variables, such as how an AT even holds a roll of tape when they're taping, this is another thing that I think the AT community would be fascinated about is when it comes to how an AT holds a roll of tape. Are they holding it this way? Are they holding it that way? Are they tearing it from above? Are they tearing it from underneath? The direction that they apply the tape. If you're doing an ankle, are you applying the tape from top underneath, or are you coming from underneath over the top? When you combine all those variables, the tape can have a very different feel. So it becomes complex. It can be as complicated as you want to make it. And that's where having the insight is good, to be able to, pull from all of those variables what's really relevant, and then you can pursue them. Other attributes, seating, how a tape seats on itself. When I use the term seating, what I'm talking about is how a tape lays upon the layer below. When you're overlapping layers of tape, say half the width, as you're doing an ankle, for example.
Is that like the smoothness, or is it the adherence, or is it all of the?
It's what you want is uniformity, and in a perfect world, regarding seating, when an ankle is completed, for example, there wouldn't be pronounced edges where you can see the widths
Gotcha.
of the tape.
Yep.
I mean, ideally, it would look like just one
Just kind
uniform.
of blends together.
Yeah, exactly. So these are things that most ATs don't think about until you mention it to them. Okay, and when you mention it to them, it's like bing. It's like, oh yeah, well, I guess that is something that I take into account. Manipulation. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You're taping ankles, figure eights, and heel locks. That's about manipulating. Okay. This is a biggie because a tape might be perfect in most of the attributes, but if a given trainer has difficulty working a tape for whatever reason, due to that tape's rigidity or other properties, well, that might be cause for failure. Just that one element, okay? And we all know, I mean, every football team, for example, while most of the guys may be relatively straightforward as far as strapping their ankles go, every football team has 4 or 5 athletes that are just nightmares for whatever reason. Their foot shape is just crazy enough to where no matter how you go about it, it's like it takes you twice as long to apply figure eights and heel locks on these guys.
Yep.
And that's where manipulation comes into play. How well an AT can manipulate a roll of tape plays into confidence. And I think confidence is a big deal to ATs. We all take pride in how well we tape ankles, and especially when you're in a training room in a football game day situation where you've got comrades on each side of you. You don't want to be the guy that's constantly screwing up, having to back tape off and redo things, because then the other guys are looking at you. It's like, what's wrong with him today?
Just so all the young ATs when they freak out because the powerful or their pre-wrap rolls up or falls apart. Yeah,
those are the things that I mean. That'll cause you to break out into a little bit of a cold sweat because I hope they didn't see that.
Happened to me the first time I was with volleyball when I was at Madison, because this girl was very particular about how far, and I was just soaking wet sweat.
Yeah.
One of the other, this is like my first day. One of the other players went and got me a towel. Oh, what a way to kick it off.
Yeah, for sure. So, tear is maybe one of the top 2 or 3.
I can believe that.
Tear is probably the number one property as far as feedback that comes to us directly from our reps or from ATs. Again, you can have a tape that's absolutely perfect in every way, shape, or form, but if for whatever reason it's difficult to tear or inconsistent to tear, that is, if every 4th or 5th time you go to tear the tape and you stumble for whatever reason, that can be a disqualifier in the eyes of trainers. And getting back to personal techniques again, this is another, as far as tearing goes, it's fascinating to dig into, and you guys can all go out now and really focus like you've never focused before, but pay attention to how ATs tear tape. Because it wasn't until I got here and started researching things, it never dawned on me how many approaches there are to tearing tapes. It's astounding, actually, how ATs, again, how they hold it, tearing it high, low, underneath, over the top. So look for that the next time you're out there. Strength, obviously, that goes without saying. A tape needs to have strength relative to the application that it's being used for. Sometimes I think that tensile, which is a technical term for a tape's strength, I think there's a little bit of a tendency maybe to overrate tensile properties. There are some trainers that look first to the data as far as tensile strength goes. And it's like, okay, guys, well, are you looking to tow a car out of a ditch with this product,
Right.
or are you looking to strap an ankle?
Right.
You have to keep things relative to the application. You want to make sure that the tape is strong enough for the purpose you're applying it
Yep.
to, right? Bigger guys, football linemen, if a tape is relatively weak, I mean, we've seen how, I mean, they can literally just pull tape apart.
Yep.
You don't want that to happen. But again, you've got to factor in all of those other properties as well. Adhesion. So I mentioned seating, but adhesion is a little different. When I'm talking about adhesion, I'm talking about the overall adhesiveness of a tape from beginning to end. So it goes beyond seating because sometimes the tape has to adhere to skin, it has to adhere to pre-wrap,
Yep.
any number of different things. So and when you begin to factor in heat, perspiration,
Right.
moisture, with the stresses involved, that's where adhesion can really come into play, because if a tape begins to break down, the moment, for example, through the Sun Belt, those schools have real problems with heat and perspiration where adhesion is concerned. It's a very demanding atmosphere for tape, and that's the environment really that we want to test in.
Right.
When you're talking about extremes. Efficacy is pretty clear. Efficacy would be the overall performance of a given application for the duration of that application. Comfort to the athlete specifically is critical. You can have a tape that's absolutely perfect in every way, but if it cripples the athlete for whatever reason, that's not a good thing
defeats
either.
the purpose, yeah.
And then most of all, reliability.
Yep.
Okay. So I've just gone through all of these properties and how every athletic trainer is different regarding how they're assessing tape once it gets into their hands. They don't realize it, but they're factoring all of these things when they're evaluating tape. But a tape has to be reliable. What I'm talking about is from one roll to the next, from one case to the next. Tape, again, outwardly it appears relatively simple, but the manufacturing process is relatively unforgiving, to the point where small oversights in the production process can render a tape more difficult to work with. So, and again, ATs don't like going from one roll to the next and then finding a completely different feel for whatever reason with the same type of tape. Because again, I'll use football as an example. You're taping a lot of ankles, game day, you get into a rhythm, right? It's like, okay, guys, jump up, and you're in a rhythm. And then all of a sudden you go to a new roll of tape and it's like,
Yep, I've had that. Yeah.
That's not a good thing. Or you go to a new roll of tape and the first couple times you try to tear it, it doesn't tear well for whatever reason. Or it comes off the roll like without any resistance whatsoever. Right. You can't have that. That's where reliability and consistency comes in. And end of the day, it's assessments of all these properties that determines the performance value. Bang for the buck in the eyes of every given AT.
Right.
That's how they're going to assess product. So I have no idea how long I was just talking, but I would wager that most people would never guess you could even talk that long about tape.
Yeah, it's probably a good 20 minutes or so on tape.
And that's kind of honestly, that's kind of a high-level overview.
I was just going to ask these guys if they had thought about that type of thing when they pick up a roll of tape.
Oh no, that's what I was thinking this whole time. Like I've never thought that much about it, but it's
like
also
your taping
true.
class freshman year.
Right.
Just trying to tear it and lay it down, and all
Yeah.
you're hoping
Yeah.
is to rip the frickin' thing.
And now, when you go out, okay, the next time you have a roll of tape in your hands, be thinking about some of these things.
Oh, yeah.
See if you don't, if it doesn't affect or make you more sensitive to observing things. Another thing that's really interesting, inside of the industry, across the population, there are a lot of ATs that are using and have used a given tape forever.
Right.
Okay? And they're just staunch about a given tape. And it can be interesting when you sit down with them and say, okay, well, so why is it that this is your preferred tape? And it's funny because oftentimes it's clear that no one has ever asked them that question, right? It's like it stymies them for a second because they've never thought about it. It's like, I don't know. And then invariably what the answer is going to be, well, it's all I've ever used.
Right.
Or it's what we used in college.
Or it's cheap.
It's what I cut my teeth on. So that's what I used when I got out into the working world. And that's part of our challenge then is to, okay, understand all of these properties with our product, but we also have to know where our competitors stand in all of those properties from each type of tape. I mean, we're just talking about rigid strapping tape here. Mueller, we have 5 types of rigid strapping tape just domestically. Internationally, we have more.
There was ones I had never heard of until I started traveling. Like the Euro tape, didn't know it existed.
And those are built upon the needs of given markets around the world.
Everywhere else seems to like it as tacky and as adhesive as
Right.
possible.
And then you've got the elastic tapes, but it's not just elastic tapes. Okay, you have light elastics, you have medium elastics, you have heavy elastics, and each elastic will be available in adhesive and cohesive.
Yeah.
So right there, just with the variables from within one brand, you have great potential to be confusing. But when you factor in the fact that when you're talking elastic tapes in the marketplace, there are multiple brands that honestly make really good products. Okay. And in some ways, I think it's inside of the elastic silo that the most competition exists from a technical perspective.
I can believe that.
So you have to be aware of all of that. And in the last year and a half, Mueller, we've kind of raised the bar in the industry by introducing a completely new category of elastic tape that we call hyper elastic. And you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the recoil.
Have you guys seen this? No?
Okay. So recoil
I'm going to try and play with it more this year.
is really a fantastic product. And this one is a lot of fun to show to ATs for the first time. We have the exclusive on it inside of the sports medicine category internationally. There's no other product like it anywhere in the world. It's not a cloth-based, textile-based product. It's not a non-woven type product. It's actually a polymer. One way to describe it is as an exercise band that sticks to itself. Okay, it is a cohesive, but what sets this product apart are the elastic properties compared to other heavy types of elastic. Other heavy types of elastic tapes historically have been woven or knit textile products, and the downside of those is that when they're put under a load for a long period of time, the elastic properties fatigue to the point where it just gets sloppy, right? Ideally, you want an elastic tape because you're putting it down for supportive purposes. You want that support to be there until the athlete takes the tape off. But previous to introducing the market to recoil, that really didn't exist. This is a product, we didn't develop this product to replace any tapes in the market. This is a product that ATs are using to augment their current approaches, so they can take their current approaches to an entirely new level simply by adding one or two layers over the top with the recoil, or the fact that recoil is allowing ATs to do things with tape that have never been possible before. Right. The way you can work this product is amazing. And as far as the number of applications you can use it for, it's really limited only by your imagination. When you hand a roll to an AT and they start playing with it a little bit, you can see the wheels start turning in their head, and they're thinking, it's like, I wonder if it'll work for it. Yeah, it will. It'll work for that. Whatever you're thinking about, it'll work. So it's really dramatically different. This is actually a brand new roll, and you'll notice it doesn't look like there's a lot there. And one of the first questions that we get is like, well, there's not much there. Well, fact of the matter is there's actually more here than there is on most of the traditional heavy elastics.
Okay,
because
I didn't realize that.
This product is 3 times thinner than the heavier duty textile based elastics, okay, which is a great advantage. So you can put a couple layers of this down and it's not going to bulk anything up at all. If you've got an ankle situation with a soccer player, for example, you can really lock down an ankle instability and still give them the tight fit that they demand in their footwear, right? Things like that. It's you can actually put it on underwater. Swimmers and divers love this product. When we were field testing it, I had ATs calling me, telling me that they were having to put the samples under lock and key because the athletes were coming back into the training room, stealing the rolls once they had a chance to use it. The 1 inch for volleyball players, absolutely fantastic.
For thumbs and fingers.
Fingers. Several of the NFL teams are using it. The linemen for fingers, etc. Wrestling ATs love the 3.5 inch because the amount of consistent compression that it provides. When you have a clash of heads and say you have a laceration along the hairline with a wrestler versus current approaches, if you take a dressing and the 3.5 inch recoil just once around the head, I mean, you can control that bleeding almost immediately, and it's going to be more comfortable for the athlete. And by coincidence, the nature of the product is such that it actually remains in place quite well on the head. So it's popular with soccer trainers for that reason as well, where you see a lot of clashes of heads.
I like that 3.5 for a replacement for an ace wrap.
There you
compression.
go.
That, I like that because you can conform it better, and even if when you're wrapping, if it doesn't lay perfect, you can still get it enough to get that compression.
Exactly.
And you control your gaps, and again, low profile, and also supportive, probably a little bit more than an ace wrap. And we all know how well ace wraps stay in place when somebody starts walking on them.
Yeah, this is not going to budge. And what we're hearing is that a lot of ATs are carrying the 1, the 2, and the 3.5 inch, one roll of each in every one of their kits, because it's become kind of like the duct tape of the athletic training world. You can use it for anything.
Right.
And as time goes by, they're finding it indispensable. A quick tip, because the product is so different, you don't tear this like a traditional tape. If you try to tear this like a traditional tape, you're going to have issues, okay? What you do is literally pull the tape apart, okay? The 3.5 inch, you might want to cut because it's so much wider.
Yeah.
And so strong.
Yeah.
But I'll let you play with that. Give that to Malcolm. Let him play with it a little bit. But if starting as far as applications go, efficiencies using the 3.5 inch. If I begin with the arch of the foot, for example.
Yeah.
As far as arch issues, plantar fascia issues, using the 3.5 inch, you can literally in about 10 seconds with the 3.5 inch envelope the arch and provide them greater comfort with lower profile, with lasting support.
Right.
In about 10 seconds.
Right.
Ankle instabilities, again, depending on the significance of a given laxity in an athlete, you might want to use a 2 inch, you might want to use a 3 inch, but you can really lock an ankle down. Compartment issues, lower leg, again, so simple.
Right.
Just once around, the amount of
Yep.
compression that, why use a neoprene sleeve when you can use the 3.5 inch recoil that is literally like a second skin.
Yeah.
The athlete won't even know it's there. Definitely worth a try. Patellar tendon issues, if you've got jumper's knee issues going on, or if you work with younger kids and Osgood Schlatter's is an issue.
Yep.
Using the 2 inch just once around, you can fabricate immediately what amounts to a jumper's knee strap. ITB issues.
Yep.
Same thing, just once around. So, and that's where, again, if you're on the road, these things come up, but you can manage all of these needs with just one tape.
Yep.
Okay. So this is where the product really pays for itself. It's not cheap, but it's not prohibitively expensive. It prices out, all things considered, it prices out very close to the current heavyweight elastics that are in the market. So we're just really over the moon with this product and what we've been able to achieve with it, even though it's only been in the market for a short period of time. So it's not mainstream yet, but the word is definitely spreading.
Yeah, I think you'll see the change in it for sure.
Oh yeah, I definitely like that.
Yeah. So I'll give you a few roles, and I'll be interested to hear from you about your thoughts after you've had a chance to use it.
Stay track.
A little bit. So yeah, I'm thinking that I've probably sucked all the air out of them at this point. But I think as an overview for tape, that's maybe kind of a good synopsis. Do any of you have specific questions?
I was going to throw you on the spot. Like,
okay.
How many different tapes does Mueller have?
It's a good question, and
or just your best.
Yeah, I'm glad we're not on a game show. But we have. Let me think about it for a second, because we have specialty tapes as well. Tapes that go to into the retail market specifically for sporting goods. In total, upwards of 20 to 25.
I was gonna say I could if I sat and thought about it, could come up with around 20. Yep. When you mentioned you've got 5 just of your kind of traditional ones.
I had been here a year, and every once in a while I'd still stumble into a tape that I didn't even know existed here. So
that's funny.
But yeah, I mean it's the breadth of our selection is is fast.
Yeah, get accomplished what you need to. I know we use several versions situationally.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the same. I think at the school I'm at, we actually have the Mueller Perform tape.
Okay.
Learned to really like that over the last year.
That's what we use.
Yep. Perform's a real popular tape. And again,
But then we also use the athletic care as our like wrist taping for like the football guys that just want to come in and throw a couple strips around because it does the trick. It's a little more affordable on our budget. Works out well.
Yeah, and
So.
these are all. This is all feedback that's interesting for us because you might go into a school training room where the head AT makes the decision for everybody, right? And it's just one type of tape.
Sounds about right.
And that's what they use. Or you might go into a school where, I let each of my ATs choose for themselves whatever they want to use. So you might see 4 or 5 different types or brands of tape being used. It varies. But the thing then is to say, oh, that's really cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, what led you to that decision? I mean, why are you taking that approach? How has that worked for you? Things like that. These are hopefully ATs that are watching this broadcast. I would say feel free to contact us with your observations about product. Are there things as far as physical properties, performance attributes that aren't being addressed that should be in the marketplace? One great advantage that Mueller has is that we have quite a few regional sales managers around the country, and we'll have them stop and see you if you have specific needs, questions. If you want to check out a type of tape, by all means, we'll work with you on that. It's about engagement again.
It's huge.
So
yeah,
it's a big part of things.
Do you guys have any taping questions now that you've got the full?
I don't think so.
No, I just wish we would have had this during the spring. It would have been helpful. Had some Achilles issues. Track and field.
Yeah.
One of the biggest complaints we had was they didn't like the bulk of the heavier elastic tape. So I think this would have really helped out.
Yeah, exactly. It's so I would say experiment with it. I can't say there's going to be a fix for absolutely everything, but if you have futile results with other types of tape with a certain approach, hey, give it a whirl. Or maybe you want to combine it
It's
with
the arts
another
and
type
crafts
of
part
tape.
of athletic training.
Yeah, that's really, again, we know how intuitive we can be as a community, right? I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, and that's we're a lot like MacGyver, I think, as a population.
For sure.
Give us a gum wrapper, a lemon wedge, and a potato, and we can make a shortwave radio.
There you go.
We're used to those things. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else you wanted to cover on tape, or we can jump into
I don't
our
think
athletic
you want
training?
me to,
No?
to
Okay.
get going on anything else, but
Maybe we'll have a round 2 on tape.
well, yeah,
sometime.
exactly. I mean, no doubt there's going to be a second session that
For
we
sure.
can have down the road. This has been fun.
Well, so then our 5 questions and that we always ask. First one, what does being an athletic trainer or formerly being an athletic trainer mean to you?
That's a great question. I think just speaking in general terms, and I know that the NATA is aggressively addressing this. Within the general public, I don't think there's as much awareness regarding the significance of contributions made by athletic trainers. I always enjoy having the opportunity to elaborate with people who don't know just the difference that ATs make. I mean, for example, pull ATs out of the National Football League, and you're going to have an empty stadium every Sunday. The sport, I mean, team sports at high levels, as we know them,
Right.
they don't exist. I mean, that's the difference. That they simply won't exist without athletic trainers. And so for me, everywhere I've ever been, I just want to make a difference.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. And I think one of the things I appreciate most about athletic trainers is it's a calling, okay? People don't go into this career field because they want to become famous,
right.
They want to become wealthy, or any other, or because they want to work 30, 40-hour work weeks. They do it because it's a calling.
Right.
They're selfless, dedicated people that want to make a difference, and I think that's kind of where I would fall as well. I'd like to think.
There you go. Do you remember one of your 4?
Yeah, so if there's one thing about athletic training, like a stigma or like some modality people use, like what would you like to change?
Well, you mentioned stigma. Getting back to what I was just saying about promoting more awareness of the role of athletic trainers. Stigma inside of the public, it disturbs me to run into people that still think when they hear the term athletic trainer, they think of a dumpy little guy schlepping water, and that's just I want to take a stick and jam it into my eye.
A rehydration specialist.
But that's also an opportunity to say, hey,
Absolutely.
This is what it's really all about. But and hopefully we'll get over that hump. And Mueller, from a grassroots perspective, we want to give back and promote the field as much as possible. We're trying to support young people going into pursuing their degrees and their training to become certified athletic trainers and beyond. I mean, most of the ATs that I see now have you've got 15 or 16 letters after your name. So, and that speaks again to the dedication.
Trying to keep learning. Could never know it all.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the reason you're putting yourself through all that is because it's an indicator of how much you care about taking care of your athletes.
For sure.
Right. So, next question.
All right. If you could go back in time, being a former athletic trainer, so if you could give advice to yourself or even to young athletic trainers right now, what would be that piece of advice?
Oh.
You have kind of a unique perspective, having started in athletic training and now still involved with it, but...
Wow. Advice. Well, early on, I think that aspiring ATs, like incoming freshmen, I'm going to guess that they get sorted pretty quick. If as far as, again, we're talking about the long hours. I think that if people saw what goes on with the ATs and equipment people at a collegiate football game, for example, on game day, or when camp opens up in the fall, when those days start, when those days end, you're getting spit on, you're getting bled on, you're getting sweat on, you're picking up things that most people wouldn't, want to approach if they had a hazmat suit on. And again, that's where it's a calling. So I would just, I don't know if psychological profiling is the right word, but
get ready to embrace it.
Yeah, I think that you want to understand the mindset that's going to be needed, the selfless dedication that's required to have success in the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is maybe a most influential resource around athletic training that you found in your career?
For me, I I think it's fair to say I wouldn't be here right now if not for my mentor when I was in school.
Yeah.
Just having if one senior level person sees something in you that at the time you don't understand, but they work with you perhaps above and beyond what you observe with some of the other students. That's really special. I think role modeling and accountability for athletic trainers. Once you're out in the working world, you want to be an example for the students coming in, and you want to be accountable. So.
Last one is, where do you see the profession going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm excited. I think we had a chance to sit down with Tori Lindley at
Oh, yeah.
Northwestern last month, and wow, what an impressive guy! And
Yeah.
he laid out for us. I mean,
Running that show and the whole NATA.
Yeah, it's like, well,
What'd you do today?
Exactly. I don't know if the guy sleeps,
Right.
But he has big ideas, and I think that the NATA is in great hands with him.
I'm excited.
I have to admit, I am very curious to see how the change regarding curriculums
Yes, I will.
shakes out. So we'll see there. But I think I'd like to see, and this goes with the general public understanding better the role and the value of athletic trainers. But clearly, they need to be paid more.
I think it'll be a shift that will occur because it's going to have to.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I've been reading more and more studies about statistics clearly show that schools that have an full-time athletic trainer have healthier kids, and they sustain fewer injuries than schools that don't have.
Right.
And it can be a quality of life issue.
Oh, for sure.
At the high school level, a kid can get hurt, and maybe it's the acute nature of an injury at the time, how it's handled, that can follow that kid for the rest of their lives, or their access to a qualified rehab, or just mental. As ATs, we're psychologists a fair part of the time,
right,
as well. I remember, I'm sorry I keep talking here, but this is a good one. When I do remember when I was working in the field, being an AT is really one of the cool things about it is that technically you're part of management. Okay, so if you're working for a professional sports team, technically you're management, but the athletes will tell you things that they would never say to anyone in management.
Right.
And management will tell you things that they would never say to the athletes. Okay, so it's really interesting to observe how things materialize and the whole dynamic of situations.
Right.
Sometimes.
That's a good point.
That maybe is another one of those things you haven't really thought about.
Right.
But I always thought that was pretty cool.
For sure.
About being an AT.
Well, just to wrap it up, you had mentioned and you want feedback from people on anything and everything with tape and whatnot. What is the best way to get that feedback to you guys?
Yeah. I opened my big mouth on that one. I would say to give Mueller a call, customer service,
Okay.
or ATs that are out in the field right now. Chances are they know the Mueller reps
Right.
first. I mean, they probably have a personal relationship
Yep.
with the Mueller regional sales manager. I guess that would be your first person to
Okay.
check in with. So before contacting Mueller directly, locate your regional manager and say, hey,
Keep an eye out for
I've-
surveys in
yeah,
your email.
well, I've got this issue, or I'm curious about this, and let them know. And the rep will either forward that directly to me, or they might patch you through directly
Perfect.
to me. So that would be the way I'd go about it.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you for taking the time. This was
Fantastic.
good. I'm
Thank you.
always learning something about tape.
I think you've all learned by now that it's pretty easy to get me rolling about something.
It's all good.
Getting me to stop is a trick sometimes.
Fair enough.